Something very serious is happening, and no one is telling you. Do you feel like the world is getting stranger every day? That the decisions that change your life are being made by people you don't even know? This is no coincidence. The Bible talks about 10 kings who would take control of the world before the arrival of the Antichrist. They don't govern countries, they don't appear on TV, but they already rule everything. They control money, technology, information, and even your freedom. And you are already inside this system, without realizing it. Now imagine a world where you can no longer question anything, where your every step is watched, and where, if you don't obey, you will be deleted from the system. It looks like a horror movie, doesn't it? This is happening now. These 10 kings are paving the way for something scary, and when the plan is complete, there will be no turning back. But there is still time. In today's video, I'll show you who they are, how they're acting, and what you can do to avoid getting caught in this trap. But pay attention. After hearing this, you will never see the world the same way again. First of all, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. You are not here by chance. You were chosen to respond to what is happening in the world, so comment below, I am prepared. Is the world being ruled by hidden forces? Are the 10 kings mentioned in the book of Revelation already among us? This ancient prophecy describes a group of leaders who, before the rise of the Antichrist, will control the earth with absolute power. Without having been elected by the people, they will not be subject to parliaments or courts, but will act with a single purpose: to prepare the ground for the global government to come. But who are these mysterious figures? Are they behind the scenes in politics, in the most influential banks in the world, in large technology companies, or is there something even darker behind all of this? The book of Revelation gives us clues about this hidden government. In chapter 17, verses 12 and 13, it is written, "The 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received kingdoms, but they will receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. They have the same purpose and will hand over their power and authority to the beast." This passage indicates that these leaders will emerge in a short space of time, and instead of governing for the people, they will hand over their nations to a greater force, the Antichrist. But if we look at today's world, we can already identify power structures that operate without the consent of the population. Invisible governments, secret societies, billion-dollar companies manipulating public opinion and influencing elections. Could this be the fulfillment of the prophecy? The truth is that these kings will not need to be elected, as they already have enough influence to decide the future of humanity. The world is being conditioned to accept a new global system where the few control the many. Technology advances at a rapid pace, while constant crises, whether health, economic, or military, force people to accept solutions that a short time ago would have been unthinkable. The search for a single government becomes increasingly evident, with proposals for centralized control of information, the economy, and even the identity of each individual. This means that these kings are already operating behind the scenes, shaping reality almost imperceptibly, preparing for the arrival of the last great ruler. And there is something even scarier. Were these kings just powerful politicians and businessmen, or was there a spiritual influence behind them? The Bible warns us that in recent times, Satan will play an active role in the governments of the world. Revelation 13:2 says, "The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority." This means that the power of these kings may not just come from money or influence, but from a dark spiritual source. Could they be serving something greater? The involvement of world leaders with secret societies and occult rituals has always been a subject shrouded in mystery. But what if these practices are actually a direct connection to forces behind the grand global plan? The manipulation is already happening before our eyes. Information is controlled, crises seem to be manufactured, and the entire world is moving towards a system where few have total control over the lives of the masses. What were once just theories are now becoming increasingly clear evidence that we are on the verge of definitive change. If these 10 kings have not yet been revealed, everything indicates that this moment is very close. And when that happens, the entire world will be faced with a choice: submit to the system or resist. We are facing one of the most prophetic moments in history, and few are seeing it. Time is running out. The global economy is on the verge of collapse. Crises arise without apparent explanation, and governments are being dismantled and replaced by something unknown. This scenario indicates that we are about to enter the final phase of this prophecy. Very soon, these leaders will be able to step out of the shadows and show who they really are. And when that happens, it will be too late to turn back. Now that you know the truth, are you prepared for what's to come? The book of Revelation in chapter 17 reveals a stunning vision that has intrigued scholars and believers for centuries. John, exiled to the island of Patmos, receives a revelation from God and sees a mysterious beast. She appears with 10 horns, a detail that is not random. In the prophetic symbolism of the Bible, horns represent power, authority, and kingdoms, but these are no ordinary realms. They have a unique characteristic. They will not last long, and more importantly, they will not rule on their own, as they will hand over their strength and power to something much greater, the Antichrist. What does this passage really mean? Who are these 10 kings? What does the Bible want to warn us about? The prophecy states that these rulers will arise suddenly and have a brief but extremely powerful reign. Some scholars interpret this as a block of 10 nations that will form an alliance in recent times, possibly a political or military organization that will dominate the world. For others, this description goes beyond traditional politics. After all, in our modern world, who really wields power? Is it the presidents and prime ministers? Or are there much larger forces pulling the strings behind the scenes? Many believe that these 10 kings do not need to be in the spotlight, officially ruling countries. Rather, they may be hidden figures, people who never appear in elections or public speeches, but who make decisions that impact the lives of billions. Could they be leaders of global banks, owners of mega corporations that control essential industries, heads of secret societies that have influence in the highest spheres of power? And the most intriguing thing, are they already operating silently, just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? If we look at the world today, it is not difficult to see that most of the decisions that shape our economy, security, and even individual freedom are not made by ordinary politicians. Governments may change, but certain interests remain the same. Giant companies control the flow of money, information, and even what people believe to be true. There are groups that talk about a single global government, a new world order, a system that promises peace and security, but may be paving the way for something much darker. This biblical prophecy leads us to a crucial question. Are we on the brink of this global domination? If these 10 kings already exist, are we just waiting for the moment when they take control in a public way? Or worse, are we already being governed without realizing it, being prepared for a system that will soon demand our total submission? The book of Revelation is not just an account of the end times, he is a warning. Something is being planned, but who is really in charge? In recent years, a silent but undeniable movement has been taking shape before our eyes. With each new global crisis, whether economic, political, or health, the answer always seems to point in the same direction. Centralized control, global governance that decides what is best for everyone without needing the approval of nations or their citizens. But behind this scenario of apparent order and progress, there is something much bigger being planned. And the question that few dare to ask is, could this be the foreshadowing of the government of the 10 kings mentioned in the Apocalypse? Today, international organizations hold power that exceeds that of the nations themselves. The World Economic Forum, the UN, the IMF, and other entities impose rules and guidelines that national governments follow without question. Leaders elected by the people become mere representatives of a global agenda, where decisions are made far from the eyes of the population. It is a system where traditional politics increasingly loses its relevance, while gigantic corporations and financial institutions determine the direction of the planet. The most alarming thing is that this domain expands beyond politics and economics. We live in the age of hypervigilance, where every step we take is recorded, analyzed, and stored. Artificial intelligence advances by leaps and bounds, collecting data from billions of people, predicting behavior, shaping opinions. The internet, which was once a space of freedom, has now become a minefield where systematic censorship silences voices contrary to this power structure. What can or cannot be said, seen or believed, is no longer a choice of the individual, but rather of algorithms programmed by those who control the information. At the same time, the world economy is undergoing an unprecedented transformation. Physical cash is disappearing, being replaced by centralized digital currencies where every transaction can be tracked, analyzed, and, if necessary, blocked. This is not science fiction. Entire countries have already adopted financial control systems in which citizens need approval to spend their own money. Now, imagine a world where everyone is subject to a single global economic system, without paper money, without private transactions, without anonymity. In the blink of an eye, anyone who does not align with the rules of the system could be disconnected from the economy, prevented from buying, selling, and even existing within this new order. This all leads us to an inevitable question. Who is behind this movement? The book of Revelation warns us of a period where 10 kings will rise, ruling for a short time before handing over their power to an even more dominant figure. But these kings will not need to wear crowns or rule from visible thrones. If we look at the world today, it's not hard to imagine that these leaders are already operating behind the scenes, setting the stage for what's to come. Are we approaching the moment when this power structure will finally reveal itself? Or worse, are we already living under the rule of these 10 kings without realizing it? The Bible talks about a time when 10 kings will rise to rule the earth before handing over their power to the Antichrist. But who are these kings? If their names are not revealed in Scripture, how can we identify them? This is one of the biggest questions surrounding end times prophecies. What is known is that they will have absolute dominance, albeit brief, and will be part of a global system that will prepare humanity for the final reign of the beast. But what would this system be? And, most importantly, is it already in operation? Some believe that these kings are the leaders of the most powerful nations in the world. Countries like the United States, China, and Russia have direct influence on the direction of global politics, moving armies, controlling markets, and interfering in decisions that impact all of humanity. But there is something strange about this. Power in these countries is constantly changing. Elections happen, leaders are replaced, and yet the big decisions always seem to head in the same direction. Could it be that the real rulers are not those who appear in front of the cameras, but rather those who never leave behind the scenes? This leads us to another hypothesis. What if these 10 kings are not elected rulers, but figures who dominate strategic sectors of humanity? Power today is far beyond politics. He is in control of the economy, technology, and communication. Giant banks, mega corporations, and platforms that decide what can be said and what needs to be silenced already exercise authority that surpasses that of many governments. If someone wants to buy, sell, or even express an opinion, they need to go through the scrutiny of these entities. Would it be possible that these 10 kings were, in fact, owners of billion-dollar fortunes, men and women who shape the present and future of humanity without anyone choosing them to do so? If this theory is true, it means that the plan is much more advanced than we imagine. The world is already being shaped to accept a new system, but the transition does not happen abruptly. It comes disguised as progress, innovation, and solutions to modern problems. Physical cash is disappearing, being replaced by centrally controlled digital currencies. Privacy is becoming a concept of the past, with tracking systems and artificial intelligence monitoring the population's every step. What was once a choice now becomes an obligation, and those who do not adapt to the new model may simply be disconnected from it. But if the system is already being prepared, where are these 10 kings? Were they hidden, waiting for the right moment to take full control? Or do they already govern, but in a way that most people still cannot see? The Bible teaches us that the events of the end times will not happen abruptly, but will come like a great trap, taking the world by surprise. If so, then the question is no longer whether this government will emerge, but when it will be fully revealed. The power that governs the world may not be the one we see on television screens or in political speeches. True authority may be hidden, exercised by groups that they do not appear in elections, are not accountable to the people, and operate away from the media spotlight. For centuries, secret societies were mentioned as the invisible forces that shape history, and in recent times, its influence has become increasingly evident. Illuminati, Bilderberg Club, Trilateral Commission, names that circulate as mysteries shrouded in theories, but which, for many, represent the real basis of an emerging global government. These groups bring together the most powerful men on Earth, those who control banks, multinational corporations, communication systems, and even the largest nations on the planet. Kings without crowns, rulers without official titles, but which define the direction of the economy, technology, and world politics without the majority of the population even realizing it. It is no coincidence that each major global crisis, each radical transformation in society, seems to follow a previously planned script. Closed. Meetings between the most influential leaders in the world, decisions made without transparency. What's really going on behind the scenes? The prophecy of 10 kings mentioned in the book of Revelation talk about a group of leaders who will rule for a short period before handing over their power to the Antichrist. But these kings do not need to occupy thrones or command armies. They may be the invisible architects of a system being built before our eyes, a system that does not need wars to conquer territories, because is conquering the minds and hearts of humanity. If we look at the signs, we will see that there has never been a time in history when the idea of a single global government was so openly discussed and at the same time so strategically implemented. Each new global crisis seems to push the planet towards the centralization of power. The economy is being digitized, eliminating physical cash and giving financial controllers complete control over who can buy and sell. Technology advances rapidly, connecting all areas of human life to monitoring systems, which track everything from our consumption habits to our thoughts and opinions. Free speech is being silenced, and anyone who questions this new order is quickly censored. This is not just a natural process of societal evolution, it is a meticulously engineered plan. The Illuminati, Bilderberg, and the Trilateral Commission have always been mentioned as groups that work towards the creation of a single government. And if there is one thing that the scriptures make clear, it is that the world will move in this direction before the rise of the Antichrist. But the most disturbing question is not whether this system is being prepared, because the signs indicate that he is already here. The big question that remains is, what will be the next step? What will happen when these invisible kings finally come out of the shadows to consolidate their total rule? Technology has become the greatest tool of control in human history. Never before in the history of civilization has such immense power been concentrated in the hands of so few. Every click, every purchase, every virtual conversation we have is being recorded, analyzed, and stored, not just to understand what we think, but to shape what we think next. If before empires needed armies to conquer territories, today war takes place in the domain of the mind, and the battlefield is invisible. We are facing a different kind of slavery, one that does not use chains or prisons, but rather algorithms and artificial intelligence. Who really holds this power? In the past, governments depended on their advisors to make strategic decisions. But today, the world's largest technology corporations know more about individuals than they know themselves. Giant companies have detailed records of tastes, emotions, weaknesses, and desires, being able to predict behaviors even before the person themselves realizes their inclinations. Every website visited, every online purchase, every interaction on social media powers a global surveillance system where decisions are not only observed but manipulated imperceptibly. Now imagine if these corporations were allied with the 10 kings mentioned in the Bible, those who will rule before handing over their power to the Antichrist. Dominion would no longer need armies or forced decrees. It would be accepted willingly, disguised as convenience, security, and progress. People would not need to be coerced into accepting this global government. They would simply want to belong to him, because your entire life would already be intertwined in this system. Technology is moving towards the point where it can recognize human emotions in real time, anticipate actions, and even induce thoughts, and all this under the guise of improving the user experience. But what happens when this tool starts to be used, not to serve humanity, but to control it? A global government may not need tanks and soldiers if it can make billions of people believe they are choosing for themselves, when in fact, your choices have already been programmed to lead to a single destination. This is the type of control that cannot be combated with weapons, as the individual's own mind becomes the enemy's stronghold. If the system already knows your fears, your weaknesses, and your passions, how can it resist such sophisticated control? The world is moving towards an era where submission will not be imposed by force but by the will of the masses, and those who try to escape this control can simply be silenced, excluded from the system, or labeled as enemies of the new order. The prophecy of the 10 kings may be fulfilling itself before our eyes, not in the way ancient empires conquered land, but in a much more subtle and definitive way, through voluntary acceptance of a system that appears harmless, but which, in reality, is already shaping the future of humanity into something much greater than most can imagine. The Bible reveals to us that, in the last days, a group of 10 kings will rise to rule the earth, playing a decisive role in the realization of prophetic events. But what few realize is that these leaders will have a direct connection to Israel and the reconstruction of the Third Temple of Jerusalem, an event that, according to many scholars, will be one of the final triggers for the fulfillment of the apocalypse. Since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, the Jewish people have kept alive the hope of its reconstruction. For centuries, this promise seemed distant, but today, more than ever, the world is seeing clear signs that this event may be closer than we imagine. In Israel, there are already concrete plans for the new temple. The Temple Institute, an organization that has been working to make this prophecy a reality for years, has already recreated the sacred utensils, trained priests, and even prepared the architectural design of the building. But there is a big obstacle in the way. The Temple Mount, the place where the structure is to be erected, is at the center of one of the biggest religious and political disputes on the planet. The Middle East has always been a scene of conflict, but in recent years, tensions between Israel and its neighbors have increased alarmingly. Wars, terrorist attacks, threats from powerful nations, everything seems to be converging towards a decisive moment. And in this scenario, the question that many ask arises: could it be that the 10 kings prophesied in the Bible are already working behind the scenes to shape this outcome? The prophecy indicates that these kings will have a global power and that his dominion will be brief but decisive. They can not only influence world politics, but facilitate the construction of the Third Temple, perhaps guaranteeing political, economic, or even military support for this project. If we look closely, we will see that the biggest global leaders now openly discuss issues related to Israel, proposing peace agreements, alliances, and solutions to conflicts in the region. But are these efforts really to ensure stability, or are they, in fact, setting the stage for the fulfillment of something much greater? The Book of Daniel and Revelation indicate that Antichrist will emerge in this context, and that the Third Temple will play a crucial role in his rise to power. He will make a pact with Israel, bringing a false peace, and then will profane the sanctuary, declaring himself God before the world. What if these 10 kings are those who somehow will they pave the way for this moment, preparing humanity to accept this new global leadership? The signs are everywhere. The conflict in the Middle East grows every day. Alliances between nations become more unstable, and plans for the new temple continue to advance silently. What seemed distant now seems increasingly inevitable. The pieces on the board are moving, and those who govern the world may be much more involved in this process than we realize. But there is still something we need to understand. When this global government finally reveals itself, will the world be ready to recognize what is really happening? The prophecy is clear and undeniable. The 10 kings will not rule alone. They are just pieces on a much larger board, placed strategically to pave the way for a supreme leader, a leader who will not only dominate nations, but will win the hearts and minds of billions of people, offering answers to humanity's dilemmas. But this leader will not be an ordinary ruler. It will appear as the savior that the world awaits, bringing solutions that may seem miraculous, but which in the end will lead to total ruin. This leader is the Antichrist. For centuries, humanity has been searching for someone capable of unifying nations, end wars, resolve the economic crisis, and offer hope to a collapsing world. Leaders come and go, but there has never been anyone who could master all areas at the same time. However, the scriptures warn us that this man will come, and when he does, the world will be ready to welcome you with open arms without realizing the trap that is being set. The 10 kings mentioned in the book of Revelation will have a very specific function, will hand over their power to this leader, recognizing in him the only authority capable of governing over the entire earth. They will not resist. They will not try to keep their thrones, because the entire plan has already been designed from the beginning. They will do this because we'll already be aligned with your agenda, working silently to make the transition happen without resistance. When the time is right, they will pave the way for him to assume absolute dominance. And how will this leader manage to deceive everyone? The answer is simple. It will bring peace, but it will be a false peace, a temporary agreement that will cause rival nations to unite, historic enemies to lay down their weapons, and the world to breathe a sigh of relief for a while. The crisis in the Middle East, economic conflicts, social chaos, all of this will create such global despair that people will want any solution, and when that man emerges, they will believe he is the answer. But there is something even more worrying. The world is already being conditioned to accept this figure. If we look carefully, we will see that people are increasingly inclined to look for an earthly savior, someone who represents stability and security in the midst of chaos. The media already rehearses this narrative, celebrating charismatic leaders as true modern messiahs. Political and ideological movements are used to accustom the masses to following orders without question. Technology advances by leaps and bounds, allowing a single control system is implemented silently, without people realizing that they are being led into a future without the option of resistance. Now imagine, a man appears on the world stage. He speaks eloquently, has a penetrating gaze and gestures that convey confidence. He does not need to shout to be heard, as his presence alone attracts crowds. His message is clear: unit, peace, a world without divisions, without crises, without fear. People believe him. They follow him without hesitation. Governments bend their knees to him. Religions begin to see him as a divine envoy. The economy reorganizes itself around its guidelines. And little by little, the world surrenders to his rule, not realizing that the true plan is about to be revealed. The prophecy of Revelation leaves no doubt. This leader will be venerated, adored, and will have an influence never seen before in the history of humanity. He will bring promises of a new time, but at the right time will reveal your true identity, establishing the greatest period of tribulation the world has ever known. The stage is already set. Humanity is already being prepared. The desire for a savior has already been implanted in the hearts of the masses. The last step before the end may be much closer than we imagine. The signs are everywhere. They do not appear openly, but they manifest themselves in the silent changes taking place in the world. Changes that, to the distracted, may seem like simple advances or mere isolated events. But for those who know the scriptures, all this seems to fit perfectly into the end times prophetic narrative. Decisions are being made behind the scenes, away from the public eye, shaping a new system that exactly fits the descriptions of Revelation. One world government, control over the economy, total surveillance, and the rise of influential leaders who speak of unity and peace are just the beginning of something much bigger. The issue already, it's no longer if it will happen, but when. The pieces on the board have been carefully moved over the centuries, and now the events seem to accelerate towards a point of no return. The 10 kings mentioned in the prophecy may already be working strategically positioned, influencing global decisions, and preparing the ground for the arrival of the one who will assume the throne over all humanity. But most people don't realize they are being taken to this scenario without questioning, without resisting, and often without even noticing that they are being led towards something prophesied thousands of years ago. The prophecy of the 10 kings may be fulfilling itself right before our eyes. Everything that is happening around us points to this: the imminent economic collapse, increasingly intense geopolitical conflicts, growing dependence on technology and artificial intelligence, the centralization of power in the hands of an increasingly smaller and more influential group. The signs couldn't be clearer, but the world remains blind, busy with distractions, immersed in a daily life that makes most people ignore what is really happening. But there is still time. There is still a chance to understand and prepare. Knowledge of the scriptures was not given to bring fear, but to warn and strengthen those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Now the most important question arises: what can each of us do in the face of this revelation? How can we be ready for the events that unfold? The answer may lie in a prophecy that few dare face head-on, a prophecy that not only warns of what is to come, but that it points out the only way to avoid being swallowed up by the system that is rising. Those who are prepared, they will not be deceived, they will not be swept away, and they will not be taken by surprise. But are most people really ready for what comes next? Now that you've come this far, I need to ask you, do you really think this is all a coincidence? Could it be that the changes in the world, the control that increases every day and the prophecies being fulfilled are just random events? Or are the pieces falling into place exactly as written thousands of years ago? The signs are there for anyone who wants to see. But the big question isn't just seeing, it's what you're going to do with this information. You can ignore everything and go on with your life as normal. Or you can choose stay alert, prepare, and not be deceived by the system that is already forming before our eyes. And I want to know your opinion. Comment below. I am attentive to show that you are aware of what is happening and that you will not be caught by surprise. And if this video opened your eyes in any way, leave a like. This helps this message reach more people, because believe me, many people are still sleeping and need to wake up. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because what's coming is even more revealing. Let's together unravel the mysteries of the apocalypse and understand what is really happening behind the scenes in the world. See you in the next video and stay tuned, because the signs don't stop.